You can't be confident if you don't know who you are. So identity is the root cause there. You need to create that intentionally for yourself.
We talk about a lot on the show about imposter syndrome. What are some practical tips for that?
One very interesting correlation I found in my clients, the clients who are usually 8-9 figures, they all unknowingly, not on purpose, had a personal practice of speaking to their future self in their mind.
How can people get closer to making decisions?
When you're looking at decision making, you need to know who do you want to become. And you need to be ruthless in staying in alignment with that.
Would you change anything that happened in your life?
Absolutely not. I love the person I am, and I have a really healthy relationship with the person I am, and I'm realizing more and more how rare that is.
Hi, and welcome to Common Denominator, a podcast about growth, mindset, and entrepreneurship. I'm Moshe Popack, and today we chat with Tiffany Taylor. Tiffany is a master NLP mindset coach and the founder of Elite Mind, where she helps you declutter your mind, your schedule, and your business to boost your productivity, freedom, and focus. And in the process, enables you to restore your inner confidence and joy. Before we start the show, just a quick ask. If you enjoy Common Denominator, we'd be grateful if you'd subscribe on YouTube, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It helps us promote the show, and it helps us get great guests. Thanks so much. Now, here's Tiffany. Hi, Tiffany, and welcome to Common Denominator.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I always wonder to myself, why people start coaching. And I always think about that there's a personal story. So tell us a little bit about your backstory, how you got into coaching in general.
So coaching and therapy tend to be along the same lines. And so that's actually where I started. I had a very traumatic upbringing with a lot of childhood abuse, and I was never taking the victim mentality with it. I acknowledged what happened, and I just wanted to be different and act different in the way I was. So I went to therapy for 12 years, and in that amount of time, I tended to just collect different diagnoses. You have ADHD, you have OCD, you have trichotillomania, PTSD, depression, anxiety, and they would tell me what I had, and there was no solution with it. It was, you're going to be stuck the way you are, and these are the medications we can give you for it. I knew there had to be another way. I knew healing existed. I knew I didn't have to be reliant on substances for the rest of my life in order to experience true freedom. So I took matters into my own hands, and I started studying the subconscious mind. I learned how patterns are formed. I learned that you can actually rewire and reprogram your mind, and was fascinated by this. Through hiring my own coaches, I learned that a coach's techniques can do in an hour what a therapist couldn't do in a decade. And I knew that I wanted my life to be aligned with that, and I wanted to be able to do that for other people as well. So coaching was very personal to me because I got to be the person facilitating that transformation and healing, and I got to continue pouring that forward, really.
So there's a whole, I think, crisis really in America today, mental health crisis. If you can have a magic wand, would you say, okay, really no place for therapy as far as getting results? Because I have my own opinion, but you obviously went through a lot of stuff, and instead let's replace it with kind of life coach and people that can help people move forward.
I think there's too much standardization within therapy, and it's too strict. I think that's one of the biggest problems. They're not allowed to give you feedback, tell you their opinion. It's very strict with what they're allowed to do. There's a lot of red tape there. I think that's at a disservice to the clients. I wouldn't erase therapy entirely. I think therapy can be really good in certain situations, but it's not the end-all, be-all. One thing I find interesting when it comes to coaching, for example, hypnotherapy is a subsect of coaching. Now, the American Medical Association in 1958 recognized hypnotherapy as an adequate substitute for anesthesia in surgery. So if American Medical Association is recognizing hypnotherapy there, why is health insurance not recognizing hypnotherapy for mental health? There's a lot of things that just don't seem to make sense. If I could wave a magic wand, I think coaching should be an equivalent solution or alternative solution to therapy, not necessarily to wipe it all out completely.
Yeah, I think the way the system, I think 100 years ago, if I was reading correctly, basically, and leading to today in the medical school system, there's a situation, there's a book the whole year. So you're training in medical school, and if there's a situation, you're supposed to give them a pill, right? That's the way the system is. However, there are 199 other countries, and they probably do things a little differently. I'm just of opinion to be a critical thinker, that there might be just other ways. I know for me, I work with a life coach for 13 years. He pushes me on things that are uncomfortable, but we get results all the time, right? So I think that's something that's really important. I know that one of the key points is about clutter. Why is decluttering so important?
Because what I find in a lot of really driven, motivated people, especially entrepreneurs, they're always after the next thing. What is this new knowledge that I need to get, this new lesson, and it's always acquiring new things. Maybe there's just that one thing that I'm missing in order to get to the next level. I'm just missing this one thing in order to be happy or to have joy. And what I found is that joy that you want, that peace that you want, that focus and that concentration that you're really seeking, that's your natural state. And anything else in your life is only going to detract from that. So rather than trying to find the newest habit or routine or following these billionaires' morning routines, maybe you just need to subtract something from your life that's taking away from your focus. Maybe from buying all these different lifestyle things to maybe sometime in some way find joy, maybe there's something you need to remove from your life in order to access it. And maybe peace isn't something that you need to only leave to the time you can make it to the beach. Maybe peace is something that's being interrupted by the clutter in your mind that you're not even aware of.
I really love that. I mean, I think that, I do find that many people, I'm friends with many type A, I'm part of business networks, and that general sense of fulfillment, and you just gave me tremendous food for thought actually on that, to declutter. And what is that process, right? We can always talk about it, and you talk about the subconscious. Like what are the top books or lessons that you learned about the subconscious? Because you went on a journey on that.
Yeah.
What really stuck out in your mind? What author, what podcast, what really stuck out in your mind about the subconscious?
The concept that stuck out to me the most is realizing that when we have a pattern we don't like, for example, I've never had a client be able to accurately tell me the root cause that was creating that pattern. So the concept of repressed memories and repressed emotions, that's where I became the most fascinated. And that is something that on your own, you won't be able to work through. And that's what I dove into. So for example, for me growing up, anger, I had 20 out of 10 anger problems. I was so angry. I remember my mom bought me a punching bag one year, and she would just hear me going at it. And my anger would lash out on people. And the way that looked for me is I distanced myself from all people. I didn't trust myself in relationships. I didn't want to hurt anybody, and I didn't know what would set me off. It could be anything. So I just isolated myself. And I had ideas of what it could have been from, but it wasn't until I got into a coaching session to release that anger that I found a repressed memory from before I was born that was creating that anger. And when that was released, the anger never came back. It just was not there anymore. It never came back. It was just completely gone. That's not something I would have been able to read about in a book. That's not something I could have figured out on my own through my own coaching. Self-coaching wouldn't have got me there. It was releasing something that I didn't know existed. So that's where the majority of my studying went into is, wait a minute, if we have memories and we forget things, some of the things we think we forgot, we actually didn't. Our mind can actually hide memories from us, and those things that it's hiding can still be at play in our behavior patterns.
And what are practical tips? Like, what can someone do today to begin the process? If let's say they weren't going to get a coach, but let's just take this clutter that they have. What habits? Because that's what we are. We're a function of habits and rituals.
Right.
What can we do differently that can change? Can help us declutter, to go back to our flow state, if you want to call it that, because that's really what it is.
The first thing people can do is they can decide what they want, because most people don't know. If you want to get anywhere, you should probably draw a map. And so if you're going to DIY this or work with a coach, either way, you need to know where the gap is. You need to decide what it is you want and who you want to be. And if you can look at everyone around you in your environment, online, in movies, wherever, and find a personality trait that you admire, that means it's accessible to you. even if you've never experienced it before. That is how you start to see what is possible for me. If I could have anything and be anyone, how would I be showing up in the world? And from that point, you can take inventory. How am I showing up differently than that? When you know your starting point and your result point, that's where you can decide which route is going to be most effective for me to get there. But the challenge I see with most people is they actually don't know. They've bought into this lie that you are the way you are, people don't change, you're stuck this way, and that is not the truth at all.
Wondering, I heard that, and it took me a long time to get comfortable, with accountability and also with decision making. I think that's when I talk to people will talk about things all day long. You can't do anything for anybody, right? So everybody has to make, that's why also the show, my hope is that empowering people that when they're ready, whoever it is, whoever listens to the show, when they're ready and they've had enough of status quo, that they're going to take action and they're going to have tools to take those actions.
Yeah.
How can people get closer to making decisions? Does it have to be that they hit rock bottom and like, okay, here I am and I got to take this decision? How can they actually make these decisions? Because I always think about it in my mind. So maybe you have some idea about that.
Indecision, from what I found, usually comes from a lack of reference points. For example, if someone's setting goals and then they're not really reaching them or taking action on them and the goals tend to shift a lot, it tells me they're missing a reference point. That's the vision. They don't know what that vision looks like. If they don't know where to put their time, if they're struggling with prioritization and time management and productivity, usually they're lacking a reference point of the goal itself. It's kind of a chain that takes place. But when you're looking at decision making, you need to know, who do you want to become? And you need to be ruthless in staying in alignment with that.
So your mind, because I know I can have very high goals, and during that path, and I'm sure with anybody, your worst enemy could be yourself, right?
Always.
So it always is that way. That's actually what it is. High, and again, if it's very big goals, it could be super high highs, super low lows. How do you, and what are tools for resilience you have it written down, it's fine, it's cool, and you have a day and you're feeling like crap. How do you still continue on that path?
I think maintaining identity is first a really important piece. And in addition to that is the values. So values are another really important reference point. I find that most people don't know what their values actually are, which is why they're acting out of alignment with that. They're showing up symptoms in their life of not being happy, lacking joy, and it's because they're not acting in alignment with values. They haven't taken the time to look at their values, list them, and prioritize what's most important. When it comes on how to show up, you have to decide who you are. I think most people are walking around identifying their relationships around them, and they're putting their identity in how other people perceive them, rather than deciding what their own identity is based on who they say they are. And if you're constantly at the mercy of what other people think you are, you're going to show up that way. I'm actually developing a talk on this right now with speakers. You need to be able to be the main character. And the main character is ruthless with their decisions, and they act in integrity with their character and their values. But you have to know what that is first.
That's super important, right? Because it could take their whole lifetime, and then they could have pain of regret, which is at the end of their life, right? Because your parents told you something, your siblings told you something, everybody around you told you. But then just before we had a different podcast, we were talking about human need is social connection.
Yep.
Right? So all of a sudden you have a friend group, right? And then you decide one day, I'm going to write my value system. I'm going to write it down. And all of a sudden it's way different than the humans that you're spending time with.
Yeah.
How do you move away? Because I'm trying to be as practical as I can be, because these are real things that happen with people. They're like, how do I really have the courage, right, to just move away from, we're a herd species, the humans, right?
Yeah.
So we want to connect. So how do you, right? So just lonely? You're just lonely for the whole journey? Mm-hmm. Or is there ways to mitigate that?
So when it comes to relationships, I think one of the best things is decluttering relationships, right? That's incredibly important. You will be as some of the people you keep around you. But this is where knowing your values is really important. I recommend everyone know what your values are in friendships, for example. I think people use that word way too loosely, especially in Miami. And I think when you're keeping people around you, they should be aligned with those values. So obviously honesty, trust, but can you really call someone a friend if they don't know what your goals are? Can you really call someone a friend if they're not fully supportive of you, if they don't even know what your vision is? So taking your power back and your control back in terms of how you label those people is the first thing. And then having the courage to take that distance is important. There's a trust factor that comes with this, right? There's a surrender that comes with this. The right people will always show up in your life at the right time to support you with wherever that next journey is going to take you. So there is a surrender aspect to it, but also there's a vibrational part of this. When you allow yourself to ascend and raise your vibration, you're going to attract people who are on the same wavelength as you. This is something I love because I've seen this firsthand, especially with solo travel. You go put yourself in anywhere in the world, I guarantee you're going to find people who are just like you on the same wavelength, and you're probably going to become instant friends with them because you just click together. But if you keep the wrong people around you, it's only preventing the aligned people from coming into your life.
I always said this. It's not anybody's fault. Everybody's living their life. If you don't put your true self out, your entire life, if you don't do it, then it's impossible for someone else besides yourself to really know who you are. Mm-hmm. So you have no choice, actually. It's actually no choice. You're going to do it at 20, 30, 40, whatever age you're going to be. That has to be, no, this is who I am. And that's hard, right? The surrender, I think that's the highest level of existence of humans, surrender and acceptance, right?
Absolutely, that authenticity.
I know for me, when I was looking for a wife, I wrote down you said reference points. So I thought that really stuck in my mind because I wrote down character traits that I was looking for. Okay, I know this person, that person, 30 different character traits. But like 25 of them is my now wife who had, right? So that I think is a very good practical tip of, putting the right energy out.
100%.
What does it mean to you, an elite mind? What does that look like for you?
When you look at elite performers anywhere, there's going to be similar patterns, whether that's an elite athlete, an elite entrepreneur, an elite actor or actress. They're going to have a clean and clear mind, first of all. They're going to have a high level of confidence. Not just self-confidence, but they earn confidence in their skill and their craft. They're going to have clarity on who they are and what it is they want, and they're going to be performing at a very high level. So an elite mind is the root cause of what creating that elite life and business is going to look like. If you have a cluttered mind, it's going to create a cluttered life and a cluttered business. If you have a clean and clear mind that's completely sharp and on point, you're going to have that sharp performance, and you're going to have the sharp results to show for it.
And what are ways to begin? I mean, we talk about, because I look at, I remember Michael Phelps, right? Wins all these golds, and I think maybe I've mentioned on the show before, but that really stuck out in the mind the next day. And I've spoken to other people, elite athletes, and I think about holistically living life. So you have these great grand goals, right? And maybe you'll reach them, maybe you won't. But then you also have to live in this world, and you don't want to be lonely, and you want to have a fulfilled life. How do you really, again, balance all that and striving for, great goals?
I think it comes down to raising your standards. I know there's a lot of talk about, set bigger goals, go from the top of one mountain to the top of another mountain. But the reality is your life is going to fall to the level of your standards and your systems, right? You're always going to fall to that. So while you're raising your goals, you need to be raising your standards. Elite is not something that's aspirational and something you want to go to. It's a standard that you hold yourself to. That's why you hit it. So it's not just the goal, it's the standard. You don't allow anything less for your life. That means you're not allowing mediocre friendships or relationships. You're not allowing mediocre clients. You're not allowing, for example, in the small ways, mediocre bottle of water, for example, right? You're saying, no, this is the minimum I'm willing to accept, and it's only going to go higher from there. If you're raising the roof without raising the floor as well, you're not going to be able to reach it. So it's raising the standards you hold yourself to holistically in every area of life.
Right. And that means that this is who I am. People know who you are. This is, and right. That makes a lot of sense. I mean, where do you, in your day-to-day coaching with your clients, someone's completely cluttered, what does that look like? What do you do for your clients as far as in your coaching?
So first, if it's a one-on-one client, we're going to identify what area of life we want to focus on the decluttering first, so there's not an overwhelm. From there, I'm going to do an interview with them, usually about 90 minutes to 2 hours. And through their language patterns, I'm going to start identifying where the blocks are, what needs to get removed. Whether that's an intensely charged emotion that needs to be released, whether that's a limiting belief, whether that's a limiting decision that they made that I can identify. And we're looking at all the release work that needs to be done. From there, I will go through it with them and release all those things and collapse them. What I found for efficiency is that when you release a negative emotion, a lot of times all of the limiting decisions and beliefs will just poof, disappear on their own. What most people do is they'll go try to remove limiting beliefs on their own. It's so much faster when you release the anchor first. So that's where I'll start. From there, I'll release all the limiting beliefs and decisions, and then we start building from there, right? So I'm not building on a cracked foundation. I'm going and resetting the foundation or wiping something out first and then building on there.
Yeah, I've been training jiu-jitsu, martial arts, 13 years. And probably to that point, right, you got to go to point zero probably. And same thing with my coaching. Probably 7 years and 9 years of just undoing the noise. Undoing the noise to get to point zero.
It's so
right?
true.
That's right. So this is exhausting, but that's what you're doing, right? It keeps coming up. No, we're going to get rid of these things. And then what does your life want to look like?
Unlearning is so much harder than learning. And I actually learned that through martial arts as well, through Muay Thai.
Right.
I started Muay Thai with no background at all. And I accelerated much faster than people who had other backgrounds because they had to unlearn bad habits they didn't know they had.
Wow. Yeah. It's, no, because I had wrestling experience, but so you think whatever you think, but it doesn't even play in. We're talking a little bit about before about, you could be your own worst enemy. What are hacks, if you want to call it that, for when you're by yourself, the negative self-talk? Yeah. What are practical hacks just to kind of snap out of it to get back in line with where you need to go? Because I'm telling you, sometimes I could be like, I got this. And literally not even 24 hours later, I'm just feeling like complete garbage.
Yeah.
It's amazing about yourself, right? Something will trigger, something will, no matter how much you work on your craft, right?
2 hacks I'll give you for that one. First of all, with negative self-talk, that's poor programming, usually installed before the age of 7. And if someone's listening to this right now and they're like, yeah, I have negative self-talk. How do I get rid of that? I got rid of that. My first coach I ever hired, that was the thing I wanted to get rid of. I wanted to get rid of that inner critic. I didn't know you can just delete that program and it won't show up again. That was mind-bending information for me.
That's amazing.
It's super cool. So the first thing I would ask is, okay, can you think about that voice right now? Can you zero in on it? Okay, who does that voice remind you of? The mannerisms, the tonality, who does it remind you of that was in your life under the age of 7? Almost, I say 9 times out of 10, someone has an answer. And then you can realize, oh, this is not negative self-talk. This isn't me talking to myself. This is somebody else's voice who got trapped in my mind, is just playing replay. And then you can go ahead and, there's a technique I use where I'll replace that with a different voice that gets to say, essentially passing on the baton to someone who's more qualified to hold the position of spokesperson for your mind. Wow. That's the first thing I would do. Yeah.
No, because I imagine like a radio and kind of like, okay, so there's this noise, and then you do that. But then I actually do like a physical exercise. Like I put a towel on, and I look at the mirror, and then you just, okay, this is the old version of me, and now I'm walking ahead over the towel into it. But I guess whatever tricks.
I'll give you one more.
Yeah.
Another one I would give you is, okay, you will listen to it and say, okay, I want a second opinion. What does my higher self say? Or my future self? One very interesting correlation I found in my clients, the clients who are usually 8, 9 figures, they all unknowingly, not on purpose, had a personal practice of speaking to their future self in their mind. Whether that was sending voice notes to and from their future self, or having a visualization where they would close their eyes and imagine themselves, for example, sitting on a bench next to the future most successful version of themselves. And they would have a dialogue there. And that's something that had to be personally installed or like manually installed for the clients who are earlier on in their journeys. So when you have a healthy relationship with your future self, you have someone else to turn to rather than negative self-talk. So you can hear the negative self-talk and say, okay, what does this version of me have to say?
Yeah.
It just shuts down the negative self-talk entirely.
No, I think, again, when I think about the past, nothing you can do, you can never change it. Future, nobody knows. But the future of you have that control, what you were referring to now. And I think that the more you have a vision, right? Have a vision of who you're going to be and what you're going to do, and you're constantly going that way, like journaling and seeing the vision, that's where you have to spend the time to see that vision. Everybody talks about it. Oh, I'm not there. I didn't do it. You didn't do it in earnest. You didn't really, really, and then keep to those high standards. We talk about a lot on the show about imposter syndrome. What are some practical tips for that?
The first thing I would ask, is it imposter syndrome or is it imposter thoughts that are coming through? I think the term imposter syndrome is way overused, and the way you would know the difference is it's full-time occurring. I always have these thoughts. That's imposter syndrome. Most people just have intrusive thoughts that are imposter thinking. So first of all, separating that. If you believe you have imposter syndrome, your subconscious mind is going to say, yes, got it, I'm going to create that. And then it's going to start creating imposter thoughts. So first I would say, is it imposter syndrome or is it imposter thoughts? And then I would start looking at evidence in the opposite direction. And I would define what an imposter is. So something I've done with my clients is I go straight to the dictionary. What is an imposter?
I like that.
Oh, an imposter is someone who is intentionally being manipulative and deceiving others for their own benefit. In what ways are you doing that? Oh, none of those ways. So is it actually imposter syndrome, or are you lacking confidence? Or have you not lined up your own resume and taken a look at it? Or do you struggle to see your genius the way others who really need you are looking at you?
And how do you increase confidence because as you're growing, you've never been there before, right? You've never been there. How do you have confidence in new situations?
3 types of confidence I think they're important to look at. One is your self-confidence, just who you are as a person. You need to have an identity that you've created for yourself in order to have self-confidence. Most people have no idea who they are. They're walking around trying to please others, trying to appeal to others' interests. You can't be confident if you don't know who you are. So identity is the root cause there. You need to create that intentionally for yourself. Then there's God confidence. You have to know that you're here for a purpose. You were divinely created, and everything is divinely orchestrated in your favor. Like, the world is rigged in your favor. You need to have confidence that you might not be the strongest soldier, but you were sent there for a reason, and it's not all on you. I think it's never all going to be on you. There's supernatural.
I think it's very
play.
selfish to think that you control anything, actually.
I think it's delusional.
Right? It's like, what are you talking about? There's billions of people today, billions before. We actually control nothing. So, again, to that surrender. And because when it gets, you're like, oh my God, the whole weight of the world is on me. That's a complete illusion. Doesn't even exist.
Correct.
Right? And then you just give it over. That's why I always think about the idea of faith. Right? Doesn't mean you believe, again, not necessarily organized religion, but that is a very great tool. I know I use that a lot. There's something greater than me. We've been here till now. I survived till now, and go through all these things that I went through till now, and you're able to give the weight away.
And the power of seeing other powerful testimonies is really important as well. Wow, if God can use this person to do that, imagine what he could do with me.
Right.
Right? So there's God confidence. And the third part of that being earned confidence. That's having a skill, which means you have to actually show up and do the work in order to get there. And having grace with yourself that, hey, I'm a beginner. Own that you're a beginner. You don't have to show up as a professional yet. You're not there yet. Just own where you're at and put the work in to build the confidence. But also at the same time, make the decision, what evidence do I need to see in order to be confident? Because that could be a never-ending loop that you go through. You can be constantly saying, I'm not confident enough yet, and never have a goalpost. So make the decision at what point, well, I have seen enough evidence that I can deem myself confident.
What did I see? I saw something recently. You work extremely hard to develop evidence, like you're saying, evidence that you are who you say you are.
Yes.
Right? It's just what I've done it over and over. So there you go. And eventually your brain, it just overcomes like the T-chart, your brain, the negative thoughts. I know you have a free giveaway, by the way. Tell us about the giveaway. You're giving away, it's Declutter Your Mind, 5 blocks you didn't know you can remove.
Yeah. So I have a PDF on this, and the 5 blocks you probably didn't know you can remove. Like I said, I work a lot with the subconscious. Most people have no idea what's trapped in there. It's like the basement of the mind. So I have that, and along with that, I have a 7-day free challenge on identifying and going deeper. How can I actually release those blocks? So you would just DM me the word on Instagram, DM me the word challenge.
Awesome. And obviously, I mean, grateful for where you sit today, all your life experiences, because I wanna bring this to the audience because I think this is super important. You've been through a lot, okay? Would you change anything that happened in your life?
Absolutely not.
Why?
I wouldn't be who I am today without the things that I've done. And I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've been through a lot of pain. And would I want to relive any of it? Absolutely not. But I also wouldn't want to take it away because I love the person I am. And I have a really healthy relationship with the person I am. And I'm realizing more and more how rare that is. And I might make awful mistakes, and I might take longer to learn lessons than some people do. But man, I can hold myself with such patience and grace. And I have a relationship with God to hold me through. Like, I know that no matter what happens, I'm going to be okay. I would not change anything in the past at all, because also that allows me to help others who've been through the same thing. I love that it allows me to connect with people who are going through insurmountable pain or have gotten themselves in situations they think they can't get themselves out of. I love that I can relate to them and they can trust me to come to them and to facilitate that transformation. They can see it's possible.
Yeah, I really love that. It's the more that we can tell these stories. I mean, that's what the show's about.
Yeah.
Don't see failure or don't see stuff or pain in the way society tells you to see it, right? If everyone's sitting here on the show, one after the next, and we're saying this, right? So start thinking about that maybe a little bit. What is something that you're deeply grateful for?
My faith journey, definitely within the last year, has been completely transformational. Wish I prioritized that sooner. I realized that year after year, I was like, I don't have time to learn about this, and I don't have time to focus on this. I need to work, or I need to make money, or I need to focus on fitness. And I think the biggest revelation I've had that if I focused on a relationship with Jesus first, everything else would have fallen in alignment versus having to force and claw my way at things. That's one thing if I could have changed, I would have done it sooner. I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful that I started on that path, and I only wish I would have done that sooner.
Yeah. No, but that's your personal journey. We all journey alone. I always say that we journey alone, but we all arrive together.
Yeah.
So everybody gets to wherever they're going to get to, but
life can be lonely.
Yeah.
And having that to hold on to is life-changing. Yeah. And realizing that you actually, through a relationship, can affect things. That's life-changing.
Amazing. And what's something about you that people don't know?
What's something about you? Well, people probably don't know I've been to 38 countries now in the last few years. So I'm really big on travel.
We had another solo traveler on the show. Just wanted to get to that for a second. What do you love most about solo travel?
Getting to know yourself. Appreciating your own company. Whenever you have an interaction with someone else, you're always experiencing part of yourself and part of them. Most people don't ever experience 100% of themselves. So getting to know yourself and interact with the world and truly learn who you are, what you like, what you don't like, that's probably what I love the most. And getting to experience other people and not be attached to your usual, who are you, what do you do, what's your Instagram? Gosh, I hate this so much. So solo travel really breaks you out of that.
Right. Normal. Really, really enjoy that. Thank you so much, really, Tiffany. How can people learn more about you, get your coaching ability, and find you on social?
The best way to connect with me would be send me an email, tiffany@coachtiffanytaylor.com. I'd love to hear what really stood out to you, what questions you might have. I love building relationships that way. Or you can find me on Instagram @CoachTiffanyTaylor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much. Hope you enjoyed my conversation with Tiffany. Next week, I'll be chatting with Mona Amin. Dr. Mona is a board-certified pediatrician and the host of Pets Doc Talk, one of the top parenting podcasts. Dr. Mona knows that being a parent is one of the most challenging and rewarding experiences of your life, and she has expert tips to make it a lot easier. As a father of 11 kids, I'm very much looking forward to that conversation. Before we say goodbye, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, We'd be grateful for a like, share, and subscribe. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, feel free to leave a rating and review. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you again soon.